Good afternoon, everyone. This is Juan Catamayo, JCT for Education for You. And today we're going with our week, Career Week at JCT for Education, and how we can now continue. Yesterday we were talking about career evaluations, and today we're going to create your college list. And for that, I have a dear friend of mine whom I've known for years, Freddy Glitman. Hola, stay here, Freddy. You will know our friend, Pipe. Good to see you, Dr. Bouressa. Good to see you. So let's invite, without further ado, Dr. Robert Bouressa from St. Andrews, Boca Raton, Florida, my neighbor. Dr. Bouressa.
How are you doing, Juan Camilo?
Good. How are you?
Doing great, thank you.
Good. Let's adjust your camera a little bit. Just go down. I think much better, much better. And Dr. Bouressa, I've known you for 23 years.
Something like that. Time flies when you're having fun.
So I met Bob Bouressa at Escuela Americana in Rio de Janeiro when I was at Clark College, now Clark University. Where are you from, Bob?
I grew up in a small city in Wisconsin, about 3 hours straight north of Chicago, Neenah, Wisconsin.
Neenah, Wisconsin. How far is that from Madison?
About an hour and a half.
Okay. And your high school, where did you go to high school? Public, private?
A large public high school, regional high school, where I graduated with 620 of my dearest friends.
And was it AP, honors?
You know, in those days, there were at that school there were no APs, there were no honors. You know, it was a regional high school, and you know, maybe about 30% of the kids, maybe 40% went on to college. So there was a lot of things going on.
And now the topic today is create your own college list. When you were in high school, how did you create your college list?
Well, that's one of my favorite stories because, you know, I spend so much time with students helping them chart their journey. Mine didn't happen in quite the same way that it happens now. This was, you know, well over 40 years ago. And I can say I was headed off to one of the regional campuses of the University of Wisconsin, was going to be my plan. It was May of my senior year. That was my plan and what I was going to do. I was at my conference track meet. We won, by the way, I'm happy to say that. The 4x100, and a coach from St. Norbert College approached me and asked me if I had ever thought about attending St. Norbert College. And I said, geez, you know, kind of, yeah, I thought about it. And he invited me up for a visit. I did my application. I got accepted. 2 months later, 3 months later, whatever it was, that's where I went. But they had what I wanted to study. I always had interest in international, and I had international business, and I thought I might be a track coach, you know, be a person in track and field in college, which never really happened, but you know, but that's okay. So it was a little different story than what a lot of kids do today.
Do you remember the student population at St. Norbert at that time?
You know, then I think it was about 1,600. It's a little over 2,000 now. It's grown a fair amount.
And if you put a geography into context, where is it located exactly?
It's located just outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin, about the same thing as the crow flies, about 3 hours straight north of Chicago, about 2 hours straight north of Milwaukee. Most of your international folks that are listening will know Chicago more than anything. But it was an hour away from where I grew up.
Okay. So I have a question for you. Now that we're talking about athletics, my conference at Clark College was NIA. And that's almost like 30 years ago. What was your conference?
We were NCAA Division III.
Division III. Okay. And did you, I mean, no scholarship. So how did they pay a little bit or merit scholarship?
They're pretty aggressive in these days with merit scholarships. I know that. Back then, they really were not that aggressive with merit scholarships. So no, I was one of those that admissions officers liked that went there on a full pay, on the full pay plan.
I hear you, because, and it was a pride to wear the uniform of the institution, because that feels really good. How fast did you run a mile?
Well, I ran the 100.
I know.
And by the way, so this gives you the dating. This was the 100-yard, not 100 meters.
Okay.
I actually ran in the low. I ran in the low tens.
The low tens.
Yeah,
That's really good. And I know you did. I did cross country. You did the track, and what an amazing story. Then, Bob, you graduated from St. Norbert, but you graduated with a history major, correct?
correct.
From international. What happened there?
From international business to, well, it was an interest in the international. Not being a very sophisticated kid, I didn't know what I was. I just knew that the word international and being able to travel the world sounded good, and I thought international business made sense. I think it was accounting and business finance that got me to change, but I stayed interested in international history and the history of the world. So
Good.
that theme stayed with me even though the major changed.
Thank you. And I want to say hello to Caro, also to Pepito. Pepito's a student from Miami, and sadly, he's very pending. He's creating his college list. I told Pepito, please, you gotta be here, Jose. You have to be here. You're gonna meet Dr. Bob Bouressa, one of the best college counselors in the world. And let's move on. Bob, from there you went to your master's degree,
Correct.
Williams and Mary, and doctoral.
Yep. Did my master's and doctorate at William and Mary. I mentioned that connection because I know kids are always trying to figure out what they're going to do with their life right now, and that connects to the college search, right? And for me, it was the idea of working international, and what I discovered just happened to discover that there was a world called international education, and I could go into the world of education and get the international career that I always wanted. So even though the international business thing went aside, the interest in the international never left me, and that has really influenced my whole life and career today.
Thank you. And I just want to mention hello to Marco, Gabriela, Jovita, Ryan, Annie Thomas, our friends at Revolution Prep. A lot of people watching right now. They're jumping in and out. And at what point did you go to Georgetown? And how long did you work for Georgetown Office of Admissions?
Yeah, well, what I was working on, I was completing my doctorate at William & Mary. I still had my dissertation to write, and I took a position there. Got an offer to be the associate director at Georgetown, and I also had the chance to head up the international admissions operations, which is a pretty big operation at a place like Georgetown. And I stayed there for a little over 5 years.
Okay. What year was that when you were at Georgetown?
I would have been there from 89 to around 95, 1989 to 95.
And I started my professional career in admissions in 95 at Clark College. So my question, how was it back then? Because right now it's overly competitive. How was it when you were there?
Well, Georgetown was a very competitive school even back then. Compared to what some of the highly competitive institutions are today, though, not that level. I mean, I think we were in the low 20s in terms of our acceptance rate. I think, for instance, they're at 14% now. And as you know, and what a lot of students are seeing right now, there's colleges that are 7 and 8% admit rate. But, I can just remember statistics like 60% of the valedictorians not getting admitted, and that was when the admit rate was up in was around the 20s. So, what I've seen in my years is there's a group of schools that I'd say the rich keep getting richer, and every year they seem to get a little more competitive. And isn't the joke the joke always is that the goal is so that they could admit no students and then no one would attend. A 0% admit rate wouldn't work. Okay. Right. So it was very competitive, and that was one of the first things that I had to deal with in working at a school like that. In some ways, I'll just even say psychologically of the strength of applicants that wanted to be in Washington D.C. and go there so bad, but there's only so much room at the.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. No, you were saying there is so much room.
So there's so much room at the end to use a terminology. there's only so many undergraduate spaces, but a lot of students wanting those coveted spaces.
Okay. Keep this question in mind for later on. But you host one of the largest college fairs in South Florida. I mean, at your school, you have the last fair that you have there. How many colleges and universities attended?
210, I think, something like that. About 210 from all over the world.
And how many visitors, universities you get per year, approx?
Coming to our school, individual visits, about 100, 120, 125.
Just
Some of them are the same that come to the college fair and they repeat and come back, but some do one thing and the other. So, we probably have coming in about 300 colleges a year.
So for the students that are watching, the purpose of today is creating your college list. So I'm trying to put to the students in context what you have done in the past, what you're doing right now, and how much experience do you have. So from Georgetown, how did you ended up going to Brazil, to Rio de Janeiro?
A lot of stories. Well, I hit the theme that my international life that I wanted. I traveled all over the world and in working for Georgetown, but I always wanted to live somewhere, learn a foreign language. I had offers from a lot of different places. I took the one sight unseen to go to Rio de Janeiro. A little bit of one of the things that Juan Camilo, is that I'm passionate about windsurfing and wave sailing and surfing. So it was a chance to go live internationally to a really wonderful place to live. I thought I would go for 2 years. I was there for 10.
And that's where you made your sweetheart?
That's where I met
Marcia?
my wife, and that's where my children were born.
Oh man, that's good. And I remember my first visit to your school. I'm thinking it was 96. Not, I think it was 96 when I went with the student tour. You were such a great host. I remember you took us to the student dining hall. We had an amazing meal. I remember walking up the stairs, a lot of stairs,
Lots
because
of
a lot of stairs, and your college fair at the basketball court, beautiful area. But I love your positive attitude, how you always welcome all of us. And then you come here to Boca Raton. I wonder how.
Well, after 10 years, thought it was maybe time to to come back to the United States. And yeah, after you live in a tropical zone and you have that lifestyle, South Florida works. And St. Andrews was just a good match. I also get a chance to work with a lot of international kids here. And that was something that I really valued of the place, that I worked. And I think, in talking about the college search and the college list, that's a little bit what all this stuff is about. It's about a match. And I can remember when people say, "You're leaving Georgetown to go there," and then when they saw how I lived and my life and how things were, it was a match for me.
I know. And you came to this beautiful place, Boca Raton. I've been here 20 years and I haven't moved anywhere else. We love it. Where do you do your water sports here in Boca?
Oh, I usually go to Delray or I go to the pavilion at Palmetto. That's
Okay.
my spot.
I hear the Boynton Beach is also really good, the inlet area.
Inlet's a good spot.
Okay, good. Now, Bob, let's go where we want to go. Students are anxious and parents are waiting for mano mano.
I'm with
So
you.
college list, ready?
Let's go.
Okay, so you have two teenagers at home, Philip and Edward.
Yep.
One is a rising senior, the other one is a rising sophomore.
Correct.
How is that college list going with the master of college list?
Well, so, I think in using that, everybody always says the hardest thing is doing this with your kids. I don't counsel my own son. But, for me, the one thing that I start with every kid, and this is 10 years in college admissions, 25 years college counseling, is the first thing that I want to talk about is geography and geographic destination. And I know a lot of your followers, Juan Camilo, are around the world. So a big question is, what country are you going to go to?
Okay.
Okay. And that's a kind of an important question because how you approach your whole college search is going to vary depending upon the country that you're going to. If you're going to the United Kingdom, there's an approach. If you're looking at other nations where there's a set standard examination you need to take and how they deal with their credentials, etc. But the same thing for our my students. Most of them here, even though many of them are international, do want to stay in the United States. That's why they came here to board. We're a boarding school. For those of you that are following that don't know that, and we talk about geography. Because that makes, a big difference. How far are you going to want to be away from home? Okay. What are the, some of the factors that play into geography? So you asked me about my son. My son is an avid surfer. He'll go every day if he possibly could. He gets up at 5 in the morning before school and goes. I can't imagine him being somewhere, where you went to college in the middle of the country. That wouldn't work. So I think geography is important from an admission standpoint and qualifications. It's important from pricing strategy because getting to places makes a difference. It impacts a whole lot of different things. And most of our students do go far and wide. They leave the state of Florida. Once you leave the state of Florida, your closest drive is, 5-6 hours away from where they are. Most kids are looking at leaving, but the ability to get back home and have that connect with family really makes a difference. So for me, that's kind of an important place to start right when you're thinking, and it's value judgment.
So if may I ask you, and I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, but for Philip, so I'm thinking water sports, surfing, so he might be considering California big time.
He might be. I think, though, that for him, staying in the state of Florida is going to make some sense, and that's really what he's thinking right now.
Okay. So he's willing to travel around the coast, whether it's the West Coast or the East Coast?
Yeah, even though that's important, I think he's putting, education ahead. And almost any of the universities, our state universities in the state of Florida, which are fine, you can get to a coastal destination in an hour and a half, or something like that. So, right. So geography matters, distance away from home matters, and your interests matter, of course. But, still, let's face reality, as much as all the interests and all that is great, you're really going to college for an education. And that's the first question that I'll often ask, kids is, because they don't think of this, students don't think of this, is why are you going to college? A lot of kids don't think about why they're going to college because that's what they're supposed to do. But if you start to think a little bit why you're going, it does start to impact that college list. Okay.
And then I have, let's say you have a student and I say, Dr. Bouressa, I am not sure if I want to go to school in the U.S., but I want to consider the U.S., but I have my heart also in Europe, so I want to apply to the U.K., Spain. How do you handle that question of three countries in one cycle?
It takes 3 plans for that kind of a student is the reality. And the first thing that we'll talk about, and this is where, the other thing to think about always for students and why you're going to college, and that's going to be an academic focus. And I think your question about, connecting the international in there is really important because your academic focus matters only to a degree in the United States, as you know, because you can change your major. It's very fluid. That's easy to do. But when you're looking at the UK, your course of study is what drives your college search, not a lot of the factors that, as much as what we're playing into some of the things that we're going to look at for kids that are going to stay in the United States. So some of those other factors might play out, but if you're looking at the UK, for example, your course of study is really important. I know you had, is it David Allen on recently, yes. And he talked about a career search, and I think that's a great thing for those that didn't see it that are watching now. Go back and watch that, because to be able, the ideal world would be, I know what I want to do. I know what the best thing to study to do what I want to do. And then you find the best place to study that particular subject or that particular major. That would be the ideal world, and that's really hard for young people to do. But if you start going through some real value judgments of why I'm going to college, why I want to go to these places, you threw Spain in there. Well, there's, first obvious question: do you speak the language, and do you have the academic qualifications to study in that country? Correct. So a lot will have to do with academic qualifications especially in countries outside of the United States.
Bob, when you have students, I had John Lu. She works for United World College in Singapore. She is a co-founder of Second Chance, a beautiful foundation for students that they can get full rights first chance. So she created a second chance. And John Lu and I, we were having this conversation. What about the students that they need a third chance, that are your C students, your B average? We're talking 60, 70s averages. How do you create a college list for a C student, B student?
I hit on a couple of some of the big what to think about, but I would say if you start looking at and put your parameters in what I want to study, the campus setting that you're thinking about, is it in a city, is it suburban, is it rural, where is it in, geographically, there's a place for every student. And every student has to realize that there's a home, especially in this country right here. Okay, I would say if there's anything that the United States is the place of the great second chance, if not the third chance. But in almost any place that you look, colleges are looking for students. Okay, they need to. It's a competitive world for them, and they need to fill their student body. So I don't think students should give up, but I think what they need to do, is go to somebody that can give them some good advice, so they don't spend their time searching for colleges that they'll have no chance of being admitted to.
You and I, we work with teenagers. The reality is pretty down to earth. Sometimes it just takes conversation. We show them data, and we say, "Yeah, why not?" There are applications to highly selected universities that are super easy, and you can try. I mean, you can go and then they go, you know what? Maybe I don't have that many. So they have a really good reality. Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, and that's great. 10 schools. But how do you deal with parents' reality? That's the question. And even the students say, my parents don't understand my own reality. How do you work with parents on that reality?
Probably the most effective thing is effectively using data.
Okay.
Probably the biggest challenge for students that don't have this is to be able to to look at the grade. Students from my school can do, because of the system that we use. They can see the students over the last 5 years, what the average grade point average has been to be admitted. Where the kids, the sweet spot of kids that are likely to get in and are not likely to get in, based on data, based on GPA, and based on SATs or ACTs. And I realize and I understand there's a lot of factors that go into a highly selective or any selective admissions process. But the first point is really is being competitive from a data standpoint. You could have the best essay in the world, you could have the most perfect application, but if you don't have the data, for top schools, for example, if you don't have the scores, well, it's just, you can just look at the data, you can present that. And there's some tools that you can use to help students get a good image of what that is.
Bob, thank you for that. And I know parents that are watching appreciate your honesty, and I sincerely mean it. You are probably one of the most experienced high school counselors in the world. You have your admission experience, you have your international experience, you have your domestic experience with 25 years in college counseling. And I am the product of no high school counselor at all. And my career evaluator was my mom. And she said, "You're going to study engineering. It's non-negotiable." I didn't study engineering. I left my house at age 19 and I was a parking attendant in New York City. And my story just took from there. But I'm worried about, I mean, we have the students that have access to us, and the students will be okay at the end of the road. What I'm most worried are the students that do not have high school counselors, and yet they want to fulfill their dream, perhaps in this country that has 2,700 universities of higher ed, 4 years institutions. What's the message for those students that do not have high school counselors?
Well, I'll say one thing is they're a little more fortunate than what we were. Okay, there's a lot of information available to students right now that was never there before. There's a lot of great platforms. I think you mentioned to me as we were talking earlier, Study USA for your international kids are there. But let's say you are international. There's Fulbright commissions, and Study USA all around. Okay, I think what you need to do is, now in the modern world where we live, where you can't go visit colleges and universities, take advantage of, the information that you can get from admissions offices. You're going to find that admissions officers, remember, they're looking for students. Okay, they're going to be responsive, and in terms of competitiveness, I think it's safe and honest to ask someone what they think. I'll just add something for the parents that I think you'll appreciate out there, because parents will often say, well, he or she is, we're gonna have him apply because you never know.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I'm usually thinking in the back of my mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
But I know. But I kind of know. You never definitively know, but
Yes.
you know what your odds are.
Yes.
And I do think, and I know you want to talk a little bit about standardized testing a little bit later, but you can't ignore standardized testing. Now, we can talk about the world that we're in right now, but let's just talk about not the new normal, let's talk about the old normal, because I think the old normal will come back, right? You might have some freshmen out there, some sophomores. You can't deny those data points of admissions test scores. You really can't. Not that it's the only thing, so kids should not give up because of that. But if you're looking at top schools, if you're not the top student in your school, you got to be the top. Students know where they sit.
Yes.
You got to be the top kid in your school. And, if depending upon, everything's a pyramid, right? There's a few colleges at the top, and as you go down, and to me, that you ask that question about, the student that may not have the top scores. Well, where do most of the colleges fit in a pyramid? They're at the bottom. That's where most of the colleges are. Okay? The challenge is broadening the horizons and breaking away from a few names that are located in the top 20, 25 in U.S. News and World Report. That's the real challenge.
Correct. And I tell the parents and I tell the students, they're gonna look, okay, no SAT, they are optional, so they smile like, yeah, they are on sale, the schools are going on sale. I say, hey, wait a second. How many APs have you taken at your school available to you? Oh, 3. And an average senior, how many will graduate with? 9. Well, that's your answer, my friend. I think this year, even though the schools are not taking the SAT or ACT in many cases, they're going to be very rigorous with academics more than ever before.
Yep.
That's my take. Bob, little question. Have you heard anything about SAT, ACT for Florida public schools?
Sitting here waiting right now because I have a son who's scheduled to take the ACT in July. I think it's the 18th. And we still don't know if it's going to happen. Honestly, I doubt if it's going to. We're in phase 1 of COVID. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. So this is a real challenge, I think, for this group right now, is you hear all the words about test optional, and I think you alluded to that, and you hit on the test optional. But the important thing that I think kids should keep in mind is, even with the enormous growth in colleges that are test optional now, and I believe it will only keep growing, I'm still encouraging my students to do what they can to keep preparing, to do the best that they could possibly do when and if they have a chance to do it. If they don't have a chance to do this and improve their scores and do well, then you go to test optional. But what test optional does is, and test optional isn't new, there's a lot of colleges that are test optional. The growth because of the global pandemic is making it a little bit different. But in the world of test optional, you'd rather opt and have high test scores.
Yes.
What's high? Well, I think what you should be doing is you should be, and this is where data fits in. You should be looking at, you can go into the College Board and use you can use their search engines. And you can put in different bandings of selectivity, and you can start putting some scores in there to see where you think you'd be competitive. That's what I, in general, say you want to be in the top half.
Okay.
You want to be, for me, to feel comfortable, you want to be at that 50th percentile or up.
Thank you. And for the students that are watching that, if you don't have a high school counselor, you're sitting anywhere in the world. I was thinking South Africa, you're in Colombia, you're in Brazil, and you don't have a high school counselor. I have on YouTube, there is a video from Maria Mercedes Salmon from Education USA. There are 452 advising centers around the world, free for you to study in the United States, where they have the latest information, as Dr. Bouressa said, about U.S. universities. So I encourage you to either go to Education USA for free advising. Right now they do a virtual advising, and you will find incredible human beings assisting you through the college admission process. The other thing that I want to put a plug, Bob, is the good proliferation of international universities around the world. So students can not only look at the US, but they can look at South Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore, Colombia, Chile, Argentina, I mean, all over the world for very affordable prices. So right now, the global is just moving around, even the students within Africa moving around. So it's just you got to do some research, geography, as Dr. Bouressa says, and also look at your budget, how much money you have, and affordability is very important. Now, going back to the college fees, Dr. Bouressa, I want to apply to 20 colleges and universities in the United States. What's your answer?
Not a great plan. Too much work. My answer to that is put your work into getting it down to 10 to 12 so that you have some reaches. This is what I call being fat in the middle. Doesn't sound very pretty, right? You want to have a couple where, yep, you're solid. You're going to get in. That place that's recruiting you hard. You made contact with the admissions officer. They're contacting you all the time. You're feeling pretty good, right? Well, you want to reach out. You want to find what your upper limit is. The hard thing about applying to college, especially here in the U.S. or almost anywhere, is you want to find your upper limit, and disappointment's part of it, and that's okay. But you want to have a good number in the middle. When you're looking at the applying in the United States, especially, it just gets to be a lot of work, and it doesn't help. What ends up happening to the students that apply to too many colleges, what I find is that they just get into more, and then they have to make a decision later. So this is back to the values that the student has. And I've seen kids take the approach, not advisable, of, well, I'm just going to apply to all of the Ivy League institutions because you just never know. And what I typically find is, or schools of that competitiveness, we should really say, because there's many colleges that are as competitive as that group of schools. I find that when kids are applying like that, they either get into most of them or they get into none of them. So what does that say? You're competitive. So you want to find that sweet spot. And I really think if you do your homework up front, if you go to 10 to 12, my goal with every student is that they have 3 to 4 options.
Okay. And when do you recommend the students to start their search?
I like kids to start thinking about this really probably maybe in the summer after their sophomore year or equivalent.
Okay.
You know, that's a good time. Your family's going on vacation. Well, go visit a college. I don't want to go there. I never heard of it. Go visit a college. You have to have, you know, some comparison points to be able to do that. So I encourage, you know, kids and families just to do, you know, just to do that, to visit what's around them, to get a sense of what a college visit is, so that when you start to narrow this down and you're going off in your spring break of your junior year, pretty popular place and time to go visit. Now you're a little more sophisticated at the visit, and you're a little more of an anthropologist, and you're not just hearing what you're being told, but you're learning how to dig a little bit deeper, you know, and you know, so and maybe I'll just hit on this, and it might be outside, but now we don't have the same college visit that we do anymore. But you know, don't just go into the admissions blogs, go into the blogs of the students in an organization that sounds interesting to you. So for me, the group of windsurfers, what do they like about the place? Da, 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 da. Because I think what you're gonna find there, if you're really honest, not that people aren't honest, okay, but you know, there's no marketing involved in it. You're gonna get real honest feedback, and it could be just in, you know, an academic organization, or you know, the business society, or things like that. What's going on? So you know, given you know how we're able to communicate right now as we're doing, really opens up the chance to be able to search and learn about all the wonderful colleges and universities that are out there.
That's really good. And I have a question. When I left Lynn University Office of Admissions 9 years ago, almost 9 years is the name of JCT for Education was born, and you and I went out for lunch, and you used to say something to me that stay here. Juan Camilo, you're gonna screw it up, and you're gonna learn from your screwed ups. And Bob, every time that I screw up, I think about you, because you mentioned that was a lessons that I've been learning as I navigating my 25-year career. You always are exposed to errors, human errors, and you learn from those. Any beautiful, awesome anecdotes, one or two that you want to share with us?
Oh boy, you have to hit me with that, with the big philosophical question. You know, here's what I'm going to say, and this is where I think probably the most important thing, and it's the sign that sits in our wall, and many college guidance offices, college counseling offices have it, that college is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. All right, and I really believe that if you looks into their heart and thinks about why they're going to college, what they're doing, what's important to them, and they really dig deep into their soul and what they're all about, everything will work out fine. I have yet to see a student go to, you know, we have kids right now at over 200 different colleges and universities. They graduate from them, they go on to wonderful careers. Okay, keep an open mind. I think the biggest thing is keep an open mind, and just remember that there's no wrong decision on your part. You know, you may not get in. That doesn't mean it's a wrong decision of what you did. All right. The key to a good decision, it's really key to a good decision. I learned this from one of my mentors years ago, the dean of College of William and Mary. Gary Ripple, was, you know, that you really need to think about, you know, what you're all about. You will be successful. He used to publish a list. He used to get a list from, I'll give you a good example, I think, of Johns Hopkins University Medical School, one of the most competitive at the medical to get into in the world, right? And he would show the list of where those kids went to college. And half of those colleges, I would have heard to them, you would have, but your audience right there never would have heard of it. Look at where the Fortune 500 presidents of the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies went to college. Not where they got their MBA, because oftentimes that's what they put out there, where they did their undergraduate degree. And I think they'll be amazed. And I think if students can break away from just looking at the rankings at the top ranking, and that's the only place to get what they're looking for, then I think they're going to oftentimes miss the key gems. That not too long ago, I remember she had all the credentials for Harvard.
Wow.
All of them. That kind of kid for that kind of school, right? She applied early. She got deferred, and she had a good college list. Some we knew she would get into. Okay. A little bit list. It's a little bit different. But the question I asked her at that point is, I said, remember what we talked about. Why are you going to college? And do you think you could accomplish? She answered that, and then I said, do you think you could accomplish that with any of the colleges on your list? If you can do that, then this is not a stressful thing to go through. Keep an open mind.
That's very good. And actually, I'm gonna rewatch this whole show episode conversation because we had really good insight. Today I had a email from one of my students, freshman, going to New York. She was just told that she's gonna do her first semester from home. So she did her last semester senior from home, and now she's gonna do it from home again. You've been hearing that more and more. And what do you tell your students? I need your professional advice for this.
Oh my goodness! What for the kids that can't go off to college now because they're doing it distance?
Yes.
Every situation is a little bit different right now, so it probably really depends on where they're looking at going. To me, I don't 100% have an answer, but I'm gonna say the difficulty right now is we don't have that. The crystal ball that we had is cloudier than it's ever been.
Yes.
If finances are not an issue, I think I would go to the college where I intend to graduate from.
Okay.
If they are, I think I would look at an affordable option. Okay. Or if it is, I'm not sure if this is the value. I have students doing this right now also that are thinking, I'm going off to a small liberal arts college in a rural town. I mean, if that's not live education for them, that's why they chose that kind of a school. One-on-one interaction with professors. I have a student doing a PG year because of that. So I think everybody's situation is a little bit different, and maybe what I would say is don't worry about it. Do what your best option is for you at the time. The colleges are going to be taking kids as transfer students. Okay, you asked about the third choice. Well, you don't necessarily want to go into college saying I'm going to transfer, but you want to know what? At any time, a student can transfer from one college to another. And I coordinated transfer admissions in my years at Georgetown, and I saw students that got in there, that finished up, that were horrible students in high school, went off to the military, served in the military, got their associate's degree at a community college, and transferred into one of the universities and graduated from there. So every situation is a little bit different, and I know you'll guide each of those kids through that very well.
Do you know Dr. Garrett Harris? He was at Nido de Águilas in Chile. Now he's at the American School in Cairo. He just joined in.
How you doing?
Hey, Jared. Good to see you. Now, since we're in the philosophical last spring, we gotta go. Life only gives us a few minutes left. I only have 20 minutes left. What's the future of education, Bob?
Wow. The only thing that I think we can say about the future, I believe we have had one of the most major disruptors in terms of what's going to affect higher education going on in the future. I can't 100% say what it's going to be, but this is a major disruptor, especially over the next couple of years. We know that there's disruptors. What it's doing is, I believe it's moving us into utilizing platforms that we always had available to us, or we've had over the past number of years, and those things are going to only become more prevalent in the world of education. So if there's anything, it's going to be change. It's going to be change, and we've always heard about the rapid change of how things are going to happen because of the internet or many of things in our modern world. But I believe what has happened with this pandemic is it's really accelerated some things that we could have been doing this a year ago, but we didn't.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And other people didn't. So that's gonna, it's all gonna be around the new normal. But I do believe the one thing that we will see is, I mentioned the rich getting richer. I do believe you will see that the competitive colleges and universities will continue to get more and more competitive, and that's a combination of the price factor as well.
Do you see
education?
Do you see a lot of institutions like disappearing, higher ed institutions, because of budget constraints and low enrollments?
Those that will disappear will not have the ability to adapt to the modern realities that we have. It will be hard, some of them. For example, if all of a sudden you have the elite universities of the world, not just in this country, but around the world, start to open up online education, and they get the same diploma as everyone else, and instead of bringing in 5,000 students, having 5,000 student body, they have a 50,000 student body. Now you have a major disruptor. So that, I believe, could have a major impact on the financing of colleges and universities. But ironically, that's what I wrote my doctoral dissertation on. And ever since in the 70s, they said colleges are going to be going out of business, and then they said in the 80s they're going out of business, and then they said in the 90s they're going out of business. Every decade they're going out of business, but those that survive have the ability to adapt to the marketplace, because it's a market-driven economy.
I think you predicted the future of today when you wrote your dissertation. I actually had a Northeastern last week here, and I'm like, guys, you're sitting on 70,000 applicants. You're sending away, what, 63,000? Wouldn't you want to capitalize on those 63,000 applicants? And exactly, I turned that question back to them, and I say, wouldn't you want to invest on those applicants? You're Northeastern, and there are many top universities. And the reasoning, I'm taking a global educational course, and something that stood on my mind from that course. I'm doing that with IE right now, EN in Spain. 1.7 billion learners in the world right now, from babies to Grammys, 100 years and plus. Right now, 17% of 1.7 billion doing online learning. By year 2025, 50%, which the world will require 68 million teachers and educators in the workforce. So I will tell to our friends and colleagues in higher ed, there is going to be a disruption, a big one, in higher ed in the near future. And it's going to change tremendously the landscape of education. So we will see what happens. We should bring you back in the future and see what happens with this future of education, Dr. Bouressa.
I'll look forward to that.
Our friends from Education USA just turned in. Education USA, thank you. We were talking about you guys. You do a great service for the students. And Dr. Bouressa, molto obrigado. How are your cooking skills during these social distancing times?
I still make the best Brazilian barbecue out there. That much I can tell you. My group working every day, doing what I can.
I'm waiting for my invitation. I tested for COVID negative, so anytime you just let me know.
We'll have a 6-foot distanced barbecue.
Okay. Molto obrigado to Mark, Philip, Eduardo, to yourself. Thank you, and to our friends at San Andreas University. Please say hello.
And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you soon.
See you soon. Muchas gracias. Ciao. Gracias. Bye.